Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Ways of the World, where we focus upon a different country and culture and discover the different ways of the world through the lenses of Villanova students and faculty. These Villanovans have studied abroad and are here to share their experiences. I'm your host, Ava Petrosky. Today we have a really awesome opportunity to travel to Jordan and explore that with a Villanova University junior, Patrick Morin. Patrick, thank you so much for coming to the studio today. So please tell me, how was Jordan?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Jordan was absolutely amazing. I loved every second of my experience there, and it was definitely life-changing, for sure.
Was this a Villanova program?
This was through one of Villanova's partner programs called SIT, which functions kind of as like another university that we work with.
Did you take classes?
So yes, I was able to take 2 classes with the program, which was a director from the University of Jordan. So I actually got some hands-on work experience there, as well as did an internship in Zatari camp, which is the largest refugee camp in Jordan.
What did you do at your internship?
So I worked with a number of different health partners, specifically the Jordan Health Aid Society, which is a kind of nonprofit that works specifically with maternal clinics in the camp, providing healthcare for expecting mothers, as well as gynecological exams and health exams, and newborn exams and vaccinations for all of the students, or not the students, the children born in the camp.
What was the duration of your program?
So I was there for about 2.5 months.
Over the summer?
Over the summer in the Middle East, yeah.
Wow. How many students were you with?
I was with about 12 other students from various universities across the United States and Canada.
Do you still talk to the people from Canada?
Yeah, we have a group chat that's still going viably strong, as it were.
That's awesome.
Which is a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Now, I'm very curious, what's the weather like in Jordan?
So it's, I was there in the summer and it was relatively warm, as you'd expect from a Middle Eastern country with a lot of desert, but there is a variable climate. In the winters, it can get as cold as 40, 30, 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And in the summers, it can get as warm as 90 degrees. But generally, the summers were between, 70 and 90 for most of the days I was there. And air conditioning is much less of a thing. So you have a lot more house fans and everything like that. So it was relatively warm. So Amman, the capital city, which is where I lived for most of my program, is in the northern part of the country. The southern part of the country is mainly deserts. And then there is a little bit of Jordan that's on the ocean. It's called Aqaba, which is the city on the ocean. And then the northern part is in the mountains. So that's Ajloon is one of the cities and directorates in the mountains. And it's absolutely gorgeous mountains, green grasslands, kind of what you'd expect of a mountain range around here.
So you traveled all around Jordan?
Yes. So a part of the program was to actually explore a number of different places in the country and look at what the differences in tourism were as pertinent ideas between what countries are people sending refugees from that kind of match these climates so that they're not, getting adjusted. Like a refugee from Norway would have a lot of adjustment to Jordan, but not from a lot of the countries that are sending people, Iraq, Afghanistan. You have refugees from Somalia and Syria and Palestine being the big ones.
Yeah. So how long is the flight over there?
The flight was about, I think it was 12 hours there and 10 hours back.
Okay.
So it was a decently long flight, but not my longest. I've actually done flights to Africa. I worked with a local hospital, or the Tanzanian Central Hospital, and did various internships throughout the country, or throughout the hospital in the country of Tanzania, in the capital of Dar es Salaam.
Was it similar to your internships in Jordan?
A little bit different. My internships in Jordan focused more on clinical public health and epidemiology, and epidemiological and global health diplomacy practices. Whereas my internships in Dar es Salaam were more focused on clinical medicine and health and shadowing at the hospital.
You're a health major.
So yeah, bio major and public health major. So kind of a little bit of both, but definitely thinking post-grad more in terms of epi and clinical global health.
So you want to move outside of the United States?
Definitely a goal. Anyway, I'm the big fan of abroad, and especially the Middle East. I have an Arab and Islamic studies minor, so I speak Arabic. study Islam, and that's kind of like a goal to live across the country.
Are you fluent in Arabic?
No, working on it, but not as of yet. I took 2 semesters of Villanova Arabic, and then learned a lot through my summer, just living with a host family in the country, which was absolutely a wonderful experience as well.
Tell me about living with a host family.
Yeah, no, it was great. My host family was my host mom, my host dad. I had 2 host sisters. One was 17 and one was 15, and then a 9-year-old host brother, who I built a really, really strong bond with. And we text all the time now via Facebook, which is just hilarious. But no, I love them all to death. My host dad and host mom are actually Palestinian refugees in Jordan from the first kind of intifada in the early 1940s. So they've been in Jordan for most of their lives, but their family has ties with the West Bank and Gaza, which is really interesting.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So did they speak English?
So my host mom spoke a little bit, and my host dad spoke a little bit, but my host sister Zane was pretty fluent in English. They learned English in school because the King of Jordan actually grew up in Britain. So that's why you find a lot of street signs and stores and things are in English, menus, English and Arabic. So they, in school, learn English concurrently with Arabic. So it's really, really interesting. And their English and Arabic are both absolutely fluently spectacular.
Did you find yourself speaking more English or Arabic in home?
It depends. I was one of the people on my trip that knew more Arabic coming in. So I felt like I learned a lot more and used it a lot more. But a lot of students, and you didn't have to speak Arabic to go on the program, so a lot of students spoke English, and they found host families that spoke more English than Arabic. But my host family knew that I kind of spoke Arabic because I sent them a letter in Arabic per the program and whatever. But so they knew that I spoke Egyptian Arabic, which is an entire story in and of itself. But they were really excited to show me like Arabic and teach me like how to say things, which was fantastic for me. I love family, so that was wonderful.
Why did you decide to study abroad in Jordan?
That's a really great question. So I had been looking at programs through Villanova and what we offered, and there wasn't a whole lot in the Middle East, which is a specific area of focus for me for public health, especially because it's one of those regions that's up and coming. So a lot of the epidemiology and global health concerns that the West haven't fully like immersed themselves in the Middle East yet. And they're still looking at how do we build an adequate health system, or what health systems can look like. Jordan being the kind of example for health systems across the Middle East, from what I know, was really interesting. And I thought that their health system kind of gives way to equal access and equal opportunity. So one of the things I did research on while I was in Jordan, and I actually wrote a dissertation-y paper on this, was vaccination equity and access. So the Syrian children and the Jordanian children get the exact same vaccines. So starting out medically, they're kind of on the same boat and the same page. And I think that's something that Jordan does really well for, their government does really well for access and equity, especially across that divide between people and refugees and host populations and what that looks like. So I thought that was really interesting. And that was actually one of the reasons I picked the program. And then I learned that we'd get to work in a refugee camp, and that got me really excited. And I learned how to interact and stuff with these populations that not a lot of people get to interact with. So that was really important.
What's the main takeaway?
The biggest takeaway that I have from this kind of opportunity and experience is that they're threefold for the most part. The first being that I do want to live in the Middle East at some point, and I think that's going to be my home, hopefully, if they'll have me away from home here in the U.S. And the other thing was just learning about the culture and experiences. Their culture is a lot different than ours in a number of ways, but not as different as people think. So I think one of my jobs as somebody who was in Jordan coming back to the US, and what my host mom actually mentioned to me, is that it was my job to share what Jordan's actually like to people who might have this interesting or incorrect view of the Middle East. And the Middle East is a war-torn area. It's not. Granted, there are wars and there are conflicts, but generally it's a very peaceful, happy place. It's just incredibly warm every once in a while. So that was one of the things she told me, and one of my key takeaways. But my career takeaway, and I think the biggest one academically, was that refugee populations are something I'm really interested in working with, and learning about the clinical health epidemiology, as well as the global health diplomacy that puts people into these positions and places. And I think this program sparked an interest that I didn't know I had, and probably wouldn't have had I not been in this area working with this population. So
yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about some of the cultural differences and similarities between the Middle East and the United States?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, some of the biggest ones you're going to find are there is a lot more precedence for Islam. So you hear daily prayer multiple times throughout the day from the mosques around the city. Honestly, one of the most beautiful things ever. I would always wake up to morning prayer at like 7 a.m. Because there was a mosque across the street from my house, which was wild. So that was cool. And then you find there's a lot more like families. So people don't go out on their own when they're like 15 or 16. They'll go out with their family. The first day I was with my host family, we actually went to, because it was the last day of Eid, which is a big celebration in the Islamic faith. And the celebration was of the Prophet Ishmael and that kind of Islam history. But there was a promotion at one of the coffee shops that was local in Amman, and they were giving away like free gifts. So we went down and all got a little free gift from this coffee shop, which was great. But you saw families together. You didn't see a lot of like people walking around like alone, or like we have a very lonely-ish. Lonely is not the right word, but a very like individual, that's the word, culture here in the US that I feel like isn't echoed as much in Amman. The other thing you'll notice is that there's a lot more hijabi, so women with hijab. And my mom actually came for the last week of my program, and we traveled around the country. And one of the things she really appreciated at the end of our trip was like just the culture and the experience that we both had. And she was like, I probably would have never gotten here like had you not been here. And she was like, I really appreciated the culture. And she's been doing her part because she and my host mom, we had did dinner all together with my host parents and family and my mom. And one of the things they all talked about was like bringing people to see Jordan and what it was like. And my mom's one of the biggest Jordanian advocates in Massachusetts now, I think. Anyway, so she really loved her experience, and just the culture shift. It wasn't as much as she expected or anticipated. I mean, there was more music outside, which was nice. I actually, the second day of my trip, the second day living with my host family, they brought me to a wedding. Jordanian wedding. That was wild. You kind of just went. We started at 4, didn't end until 2 a.m. It was lovely, but we just got in cars. We paraded around the city with the groom. He went to his wife's house to go like ask her father for his permission to bring her to the wedding ceremony, which was at an olive orchard right outside the city. And then they did the ceremony and celebration. And then they separated the men and the women so that all of the women who were hijabi could take off their hijab and dance and have fun for about 2 hours. And then all of the men were escorted in, and we all danced together. So that was a wonderful, wonderful time, and a great experience that I probably wouldn't have had it not been with my host family on a random Thursday afternoon. We just had a wedding together.
And right in the beginning of your program.
Right in the beginning. Exactly.
What a great introduction.
What a wild time. It was absolutely spectacular.
So what did you do with your mom when she visited?
So we kind of had this trip planned before I left, but she was like, Patrick, I'm going to visit you no matter where you go for study abroad. So I was like, okay, well, it may not be what you'd expect. So I picked Jordan, and she was like, oh, okay, cool. Let's like figure out what Jordan is. So she flew in Amman, and then we did 2 days in the city. And there's a ton of stuff because Amman used to be a Roman capital when Rome owned the area. When the Roman Empire came through, it was part of the Decapolises. And then it became part of the kind of Bedouin Empire that existed before Islam became a religion. So Islam becomes a religion in the late 600s, early 700s. Amman and that kind of area shifts to being part of the Caliphate, which is the kind of Islamic empire that stretches all the way to the Atlantic Sea, or the Atlantic Ocean, from Iran, Iraq, and Jordan, and that kind of Jordanian area. And then in the 1940s, it becomes a kingdom. So we saw all the different sites from all of those different empires, and there's like castles and Roman ruins and an amphitheater in the middle of the city that they actually still use for a lot of concerts and stuff. Katy Perry played at the amphitheater in Amman, Jordan.
Oh, that's awesome.
When she visited. It was wild. I didn't get to go to that concert, unfortunately. It was a couple years ago, but I did see some videos. It was an absolutely spectacular event for sure. And then we traveled down to Petra, which is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever seen. It's carved into the stones, the sandstone caves inside this area. It's actually part of the World Heritage Sites and one of the modern 7 wonders of the world. So we got to see that. It was my mother's second wonder, my third. So it was really cool to see. And I actually got to go there twice, once with my program and once with her. And then we went to the desert and camped in the desert for a night. We went to the Dead Sea and swam in the Dead Sea for 2 days and then left. So that was, she was there for like 7 days, and we were able to pretty much do the entire country because we drove. So that was nice.
Okay.
Driving wasn't bad either.
You drove?
I did, yeah. Her and I both drove, which was a lot of fun, actually. I really enjoyed it, but who knows? It's a wild time for sure. But definitely, I think she loved it, and I think the experience was one to last a lifetime. And, you know, it was a great time.
What are some must-see landmarks if someone were to travel to Jordan?
Oh gosh, so many. We don't have like 3 hours because I'd give you the whole list, but definitely Petra is a big site. See Petra, see the treasury and the monastery. Those are 2 big spots carved in the stone. Whenever you look up Jordan, that's one of the first things that comes up. It's the big carving in the stone. Ride a camel in the desert. That's a high recommendation. Wadi Rum is the desert to the south of Jordan. It's where the Nabateans have lived for years. And actually the Lawrence of Arabia, the movies, and then Dune 1 and 2 were filmed there. A lot of Star Wars movies were filmed there, as well as a number of others. The Martian. So this is kind of like a really great spot for filming because it looks like the moon or the middle of nowhere or a desert on some faraway planet. But it's a great spot. So we rode camels around there and did a Jeep tour and camped out overnight on the desert, quite literally on the sand. That was lovely. Best night pictures, best galaxies viewing. It was absolutely spectacular. And then the Dead Sea, high recommendation on the Dead Sea. You got to swim in the Dead Sea when you go. There's the photo, the image of the guy with the newspaper. You actually do like sit on top of the Dead Sea when you're swimming. Just make sure you don't have any open wounds because you will feel them for the rest of your life.
I'm sure.
It stings just a little bit, but it's a great experience. And then there's a ton of great resorts over there too. But some of the lesser known stuff is a lot of the Roman ruins. There's a place called Qais, which is in the north part of the country, as well as Ajloun and Jerash. Those are 2 kind of former Roman cities, and Jerash has the second most Roman ruins on Earth, second to Rome itself. So it was absolutely amazing to see. It's spectacular. You can see all of the columns, and then the entire street still sits where it's at. When ancient Rome was a thing.
Wow.
A wild time ago. So that was absolutely amazing, and highly recommend checking out the city sites in Amman for a couple days as well. There's so much to see there too.
Did the desert get cold at night?
Yes. Yeah, it does. It not as cold as you would think, but it was like a reasonable temperature at night. And then kind of ungodly during the day.
Yeah.
A
big difference.
For sure. But definitely a really interesting one.
Can you tell me more about the food?
Oh, the food. I think about it and go back to my time there. The best cooks are home cooks, and I will say that for the rest of my life. My host mom was an amazing chef. The food is mainly rice based. They have a lot of lamb, a lot of chicken. Obviously, pita is a big thing. And the breads are absolutely wonderful. And then hummus, tabbouleh, any of those kind of like Mediterranean dishes that you might think of. But the best stuff, highly recommend Googling this later if you get the chance, is makluba, which is it's literally upside down. That's the Arabic word for upside down. Mm-hmm. You cook everything in a pot and then you flip it over and hammer it when it comes out of the oven, and it tastes absolutely spectacular.
What's in it?
So it's potatoes, onions, cauliflower, rice, chicken usually, and then a bunch of spices, like Middle Eastern spices. So
that sounds
delicious, delicious. And then the national dish of Jordan is called mensef, which is rice and usually lamb. It's the official Jordanian way is always lamb, I was told, after ordering it with chicken one time. And they were like, no, you can't do that, no more, lamb only. But that's, and then it's a boiled like yogurt sauce that goes over it. And it's absolutely divine as well.
Did you learn how to cook any of this with your host mom?
I did, actually. So she was able to show me some cooking tips and tricks. We never did a full cooking session, but I got to spend some time in the kitchen, although that's usually not where you'll find most males. She was like, Patrick, I'll show you how to bring this back to the US to share a little bit of Jordan with people back home. So I was like, yeah, of course. And she showed me how to make a couple of these. She showed me how to make makluba, actually. So when I go home, usually I cook once a week when I go home for breaks, and that has become one of my signature dishes.
So you've already made it?
Oh, yeah, a couple times, actually.
Awesome.
But it's a family favorite for sure.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, tell me about, is the scarf that you're wearing now from Jordan?
Yes. So this is called a shmek. It's similar to a kufaya, which you'll see a lot of Palestinians wearing. The shmek was actually designed for the Jordanian military to distinguish military from civilian personnel when Jordan was part of the British Empire. So this scarf has become synonymous with the Jordanian national identity. You'll see a lot of people wear it over their heads with the egail, which is the black rope thing that sits on top of it, including the King of Jordan and all of the royal family. But usually it's worn just as a symbol of Jordan and Jordanian identity. The all-white one that you see on most Saudis and Emiratis is called a gutra, and the black and white one that you see on most Palestinians and anybody coming from the region, because the original colors would be the kufaya.
That's so interesting.
It's a little history, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could describe Jordan in 3 words, how would you describe it?
Jordan is, to put it in the immortal words of my host mom and my academic director, Jordan's a place of opportunity. It's family and it's home. I don't know, I felt by the time that I was leaving the country that I was going back to somewhere foreign, not leaving somewhere foreign. And I miss it. There's little Jordanian things that I recognize in my life that I do now a lot differently, including perfume. So when I wear cologne, there's actually oil-based colognes in Jordan that I usually wear now, instead of wearing the spray-on stuff from the West. Or there's just little greetings and stuff that I miss, or I miss hearing the Arabic or the call to prayer from the masjid every night. So little things, but home definitely would be one of the biggest words I'd use, for sure.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
If you could redo any aspect of your abroad experience, if you would at all, maybe you wouldn't, what would it be?
Everything would be my answer. I think that just going somewhere and living abroad gives you such an experience and a culture that is much beyond what you can get here in the States. I think one of my greatest experiences was that wedding. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'd get that again, but I'm happy I got it. And it showed me a different part of culture that I hadn't really thought of, or thought that I would experience at all when I was there. So there was something really exciting and interesting that I was able to kind of grasp with and work with. And I think that just going anywhere, whatever that is, even if it's not too far away from home, Europe, Canada, Mexico, South America, the Caribbean, anything like that, any experience in culture is the entire reason to do study abroad. It's just to go and see something different. And maybe you'll like it better and maybe you won't, but it kind of gives you an opportunity just to at least try. So highly recommend for anybody who's thinking about it.
Would you do anything differently?
I think I would prepare differently. One of the biggest things that I wasn't totally sure of was what to wear a little bit, especially in like a professional setting, because I did work with the State Department and a lot of like organizations like that, doing grant applications, and I was working in like an office space for 3 days out of the week, and then at the camp 1 day a week, and then we had a 2-day weekend. Our Fridays and Saturdays are weekend days in Jordan, and Sunday through Thursdays work days.
Oh, wow.
So a little bit of a shift too there. So I don't think I was necessarily thinking about that when I left, but I would have packed less shorts, I'll be completely honest. You usually don't find a lot of people wearing shorts unless you want to look like a tourist. So most people will wear pants and stuff like that. So I would have packed more pants. This is a small thing for sure, but a funny one. And then like, I think I would have just thought a little bit more about what I was walking into when I was walking into it, and how I could have potentially changed my life like it did. I don't think I was fully ready for that either, but very welcomed for sure.
So my last question for you is, what advice would you give someone who wants to travel to Jordan?
Yeah. Expect the unexpected in the best way possible. Jordan's different than most places. It's not necessarily different in what you're going to experience, but it's different in what you'll leave with. I think one of the biggest culture shocks for me was walking into a grocery store or anything like that and just being offered tea, not because it's like paid for, but because it's free and because somebody wants to talk to you and have an experience. And I think that just embrace connection would be my biggest piece, is to just be open to talking to people. There's so many people that really love their life in Jordan, and they want to share it with you, and they'll give you some Bedouin tea, and they'll, talk about it with you. Even if their Arabic isn't perfect or their English isn't perfect, and my Arabic sure is not, you don't really need it, because people will just try and talk. And if you can't have a conversation, Google Translate's always there to help, as per a couple of texts with my host mom. Don't ever tell her I said that. But she, her and I actually were able to figure out connections. And a lot of people would like Google Translate something or pull over a friend who speaks English, and you'd have a conversation with them. And I think that just embracing that newness of the entire experience is something I would say you definitely need to try.
Patrick, what an incredible experience you had. And thank you so much for sharing it with all of us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning into today's episode of The Ways of the World. I'm your host, Ava Petrosky. We'll see you next time.